I'm really bad at openings, so I'm just gonna say hi. And today we're gonna do like an overview of my own little personal Azusa deck. It's gonna be part of like a series of videos about EDH commanders that are super powerful or moderately powerful. Not super, but they're underrated or underused for one reason or the other. Should be noted, I plan on releasing a video like this every month or so as part of the series. However long it takes me to like pick a commander, actually make the deck, and then make the deck physically and play it for a while to get a feel for it. It's also be noted, if you want to check out some of my live streams, we stream on Twitch and Facebook. I'll leave links to those in the description below as well as on screen, and there'll also be a link to the deck list on Moxfield below. We're going to jump into it right after a couple points here that I want to make about the video and the deck. For starters, this is not a budget deck. It's kind of expensive. If you don't want to buy or can't afford or can't get a hold of any of the cards in it, but you kind of want to make your own, there's no shame in proxying, especially for something like Spell Table. If you're playing online or in a casual pod with your friends, you know, EDH is a casual format. Most people want to play against the player, not the player's wallet. Should be also noted that I'm not good with words, and I'm not a fancy video editor, so don't expect any fancy much. Expect some words to messed up or whatever. Should also be noted, this is not an Eldrazi or a Stax Azusa. There are two Eldrazi's in the deck that draw cards, but it is not over the top Eldrazi. It's mono green card draw, which is where the two Eldrazi's come into play. It's also not a CDH deck. We play high power here, so like your 7 to 8 lobbies. If CDH is 9 and 10, right? We don't particularly care for games that can end on the first turn potentially. Probably decks that take about 30-45 minutes. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. So we're going to start out in card advantage for the deck. The card advantage is Augur of Autumn, Courser of Kruvix, Oracle, Moldiah, Scroll Rack, and Sylvan Library. Preferably of the ones that let you play the lands off the top, we want the Augur. I mean, Oracle's nice, it lets you play an extra land, which can be useful later in the game in some ways, but Augur, not having to reveal, and she actually has the benefit of, if you have Coven playing creatures, she's honestly better. Scroll Rack might seem a little weird in the deck, but when the deck does what it wants to do, you're going to draw like 30 cards in a turn once, and being able to nitpick those and put 30, or if you're drawing 30, then 24 of them back and getting 24 more really excels the deck. I'm going to Scroll Rack 14. Sylvan Library is kind of self-explanatory, especially when paired with cards like Augur and Oracle and Courser, right? Next we got Card Draw, which we have some of the traditional green card draw like Group Primal Hunter and Harmonize. Hunter's Prowess is one that's not seen much, but especially in the early game, if you get Azusa out turn 2, which is the deck really wants to do and you should probably aim for, and having 5 mana by turn 3 at least, being able to give her +3/+3 trample, and the best part, draws, when this creature does combat damage, draw that many cards. Either you're going to swing at somebody that's got like a 1/1 and they might try to chump just to prevent you with one card, but you denied them a card by destroying that creature and it trampled through, and you're still probably going to at least draw 2 cards, right? Then you have the Eldrazi's like Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, and Kozilek the Great Distortion, which are the only 2 Eldrazi's in the deck. This is not an Eldrazi Azusa, but they both draw cards, with the Butcher of Truth having the added benefit of kind of being a removal magnet, right? So if you have Butcher of Truth, everybody is scared of the Annihilator 4, so they just kind of beast within that instead of something else that matters, right? And then when they don't kill either of the Kozileks, cards like Life's Legacy, Momentous Fall, and Garuk, mentioned earlier there, they really like having big creatures to draw cards off of. So does Return of the Wild Speaker and Rishkar's, Soul's Majesty. I'm going to cast a Momentous Fall, sacrificing Kozilek. That was a part of the cost. So this will get shuffled in. And draw cards equal to its power, gain life equal to its toughness, which is both 12. Regal Force is really good when paired with Avenger of Zendikar and Skewed Swarm, who we'll talk about later. And even in an earlier game, when you have like 3 creatures, he may be 7 mana, but if you have the mana, drawing 4 cards is better than drawing no cards, right? But in that late game, you can draw most of your library with Avenger and Skewed, specifically Skewed. Play a Regal Force.
Drawing more cards.
It'll draw 31 cards. Regal Force, winner. If that goes through, that'll be 21. I'll cast Shamanic Revelation.
What's that one do?
That will also draw a card for each creature you control.
Oh yeah.
You actually, guys, I decked myself. Have fun. Jesus.
Oh no.
God damn.
No, really?
It's 20. Then we have Tireless Tracker, who's probably the slowest way to draw cards, but hey, it's landfall, drawing cards. Take what you can get sometimes. And then we have Nissa Vital Force. And Nissa, her ability to recur stuff makes her kind of useful sometimes, but for the most part, you're trying to get her out early enough to be able to +1 her, 1 turn around the table, come back to you, minus her, and then you'll be able to draw a card every time a land enters the battlefield. Obviously, I am going to ultimate Nissa.
Yeah. Naturally.
Yeah. For the dumbest, easiest Planeswalker ult in existence. Next, we have the Creature Tutoring. There's a couple of Creature Tutors I'd like to put in here, like Summoner's Pact, which there's a list of considering cards that I'll probably throw in towards the end of this. But for now, we got Court of Calling, Fierce Empath. Fierce Empath is kind of just like another body to block with, or to be sack fodder for like Natural Order. But he can find cards like Regal Force or Avenger of Zendikar. There's also a Bane of Progress in here, which will be in the removal. He can kind of just fetch those for any of those situations while also being a blocker. Green Sun Zenith. It's Green Sun Zenith. Tooth and Nail. It's a semi-oldie, but it's a good one. It's not used as much, but 9 mana. Nah, I kind of prefer Natural Order, even though it's only 1 creature, but 4 mana. And then Worldly Tutor is kind of self-explanatory. Just put 1 creature on top of your deck, instant speed. Then we have Land Tutors. So Land Tutors kind of lacking here. I'm thinking of adding more like Reap and Sow, but for now, Crop Rotation, Expedition Map, Sylvan Scrying, Crop Rotation, sack a land, put 1 in play, Expedition Map, 1 CMC, 2 get a land in your hand, Sylvan Scrying, 2 CMC, put a land in your hand. None of them have to be basics.
Perfect.
So Ursus is going to go off, but I actually have an action. Obviously tapping it for a mana. And then with that ability on the stack, I would like to crop rotate it. And the mana dorks, we got Arbor Elf, Birds of Paradise, Boreal Druid, Finhorn Elves, and Llanowar Elves. So the birds, the Finhorns, and the Llanowars, they're just there to tap for a green for 1 mana, right? It's another one of those ways to get Azusa out on turn 2. Same thing with Boreal Druid, it's just colorless. Arbor Elf, though, just says untap a target forest. And in most situations, you know, besides some cards that say, hey, activated abilities that aren't mana abilities can't be activated, then he's useless there. But being able to untap a target forest is really good in this deck when you have Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth on the board, which is his mono green. You kind of should expect that. It's going to be there. It'll let you untap some of your other utility lands because everything will become a forest. And then we move on to Ramp. And in Ramp, we have Emerald Medallion, which the medallions, you don't see them too often, but they're really good in monocolored decks. Probably better than any other artifact you can possibly think of for Ramp. I mean, Soul Ring's good, Mana Crypt's good, but they give you 2 mana, whereas Emerald Medallion might throw you 7 or 8 mana in some of these turns. Exploration, that will almost eliminate the need for Azusa, or in later games it'll help enable things like the Oracle would. But Exploration, just play 1 additional land each turn. If you have that in your opening hand, you can kind of just save Azusa for a more explosive later play for cheaper mana. Jeweled Lotus, it's one of the ways to get Azusa out on turn 1. Play 3 lands, play something else.
See how far I can get them out. My hand's not too good.
Well, this one has a Jeweled Lotus.
Oh my god.
Uh-oh.
Crack it for Azusa. Forest, Castle Gambler. But guess what? I'm going to pass. Because I had to mulligan down pretty far.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, one time I played Jeweled Lotus, Ancient Tomb, 2 forests, tap those, and Harmonize to just get 3 more cards in my hand. But guess what? I'm going to pass. there's been more explosive turn ones, but it's probably one of the more, I don't know, recent ones. Mana Crypt, it's a Mana Crypt. It's also a way to turn one Azusa, Mana Crypt, Forest, Azusa, 2 lands, play like a Sylvan Library or something. I'm gonna cast a Mana Crypt. I guess it's equally as flashy.
That's what I was gonna say. I think.
Well, I actually prefer the Jewel Dota stuff because it's just
if
like
you're going flash, I mean, technically, Mana Crypt costs more.
Sure. I'm gonna tap 3 casts. Azusa. I'll play a Forest and another Forest, and I'll actually have another play for a Birds. And I'll pass. Soul Ring is Soul Ring, and then we have Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth, which to me the enchantments that enchant lands are probably better than most artifacts because enchantment removal is harder, and they don't die to something like an overloaded Vandal Blast, right? Recursion, Titania's in here. She's not really too recursion-y. She'll get you 1 land back. If it's a fetch land, you'll get a 5/3, right? Crucible of Worlds, Ramanop, they just say you can play lands from your graveyard, which are going to be really useful for, like, Scoot Swarm, right? And just ramping in general sometimes. If you get Azusa out on turn, like, 2, and then turn 3 you play Ramanop, and, like, you just get 3 lands if you have a fetch in there. 3 for Crucible of Worlds.
Nice.
Very nice. There are no responses.
Oh, fun.
We got a Fabled Passage. Let's see. We all good with me fast forwarding here? Let's just
Yeah, you
response
can
to
just
the first
track
turn.
and get 3 basics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where that's going. And then we have the 2 Witnesses. I know that they have just like a regrowth effect, and regrowth costs 1 less, but having another body on the table in this deck is not a bad thing. Timeless Witness can also do her effect twice with the Eternal Eyes. But in this deck, the 1 extra mana for Eternal Witness isn't a huge deal. You're usually ramping pretty hard. You can change that out, I guess, for a regrowth, but I prefer to have another body on the table. Then we're going to move over to removal. In removal, I have Bane of Progress. Can we talk about how I said the word have really weird? Anyway, we have Bane of Progress, right? That's the only thing that'll mass clear a board. And it won't even clear creatures. You know, green doesn't really have any kind of board wipes besides Azura's Predation, which is a half-cocked board wipe. So we just don't run it. We just hope that somebody else will board wipe if we need it and work around it. Then we have Beast Within. That's kind of a given. It's just a green staple. Force of Vigor. Destroy 2 artifacts. Enchantments. You don't have to pay for it if it's not your turn. Kindred's Transformation, which also draws you a card, so it's kind of a card draw. And then you can also elk somebody's creature. We've got a Corrosive Grip, a Lignify, Song of the Dryads, and Terracodon. Cards like Bane and Terracodon actually become really good sack fodder for like Life's Legacy and Momentous Fall as well. Terracodon turns into 8 mana, destroy 3 things that aren't creatures, sacrifice them, draw 9 cards a lot of the times. Or it's just a big blocker. This deck kind of lacks on the instant speed responses to stuff, but things like Song of the Dryads really mess with people because they need enchantment removal, right? And if you're going to get somebody like Mono Black, they got Feed the Swarm. That's really all they can do. When you turn it into a forest, not even just like a regular board wipe is going to free their commander if you imprison them, right? Then we're going to move on to like Allosaurus Shepherd. Doesn't really belong in anything else. He just can't be countered, and green spells can't be countered. So it's just kind of like if you got somebody that's playing blue, put them out there if you have them, right? Before you start trying to like ball out on your win con. We're going to move over to lands. 20 basics. Obviously forests. Fetch lands, we run 6 of them. Prismatic Vista, Fabled Passage, and then Misty, Verdant, Windswept, and Wooded, which all are just going to fetch a basic forest. They're just in here for like Ramanop Excavator and like Scoot Swarm, anything that is any of the like the 3 cards that do landfall. They're also good for like reshuffles, right? Titania brings them back, etc. And then we go over to like the utility lands. So Ancient Tomb is ramp, but it's not. I don't know. I just put it in the utility lands. I could have thrown it in the ramp section. I got Boisaju, which just makes an instant sorcery you cast uncounterable. It's the only thing that comes in tapped in this deck, but I've considered taking it out because of that. and then it's pinging me for 2 damage most of the time for no reason. Castle Garen Brig, semi-ramp if you're casting just a big creature, right? You tap 5 lands for 6 mana to cast creatures. So, Cavernous Souls, that's more there to name like Craterhoof or something. So, like beasts. There's also a lot of elementals in the deck. It's one of the cards I've thought about taking out, but for now it's just in there. Dryad Arbor, it's just a creature. Land. You can actually be fetched out though, turn 1 with Green Sun Zenith for ramp. Then we got Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, which is pretty self-explanatory. You tap 2, tap it, gain green equal to devotion. So as long as you have 4 devotion, you're going to net positive mana. Reliquary Tower. This deck's kind of just built to draw cards, so Reliquary Tower. Strip Mine for those necessary situations. War Room, it's just like a way to draw a card if you're in a desperate situation. Yavimaya Hollow lets you regenerate a creature. And the Yavimaya Cradle of Growth turns all your stuff into forest, so things like Arbor Elf can untap, like, you know, the upcoming, what we're about to talk about, Gaia's Cradle. You know, and this side here we got Deserted Temple and Gaia's Cradle and Urza's Saga. So Gaia's Cradle is probably really what this deck wants to have on the field, right? Because you have like a Scute Swarm that goes from 1 Scute Swarm to 64 Scute Swarms in the same turn, and then you have Gaia's Cradle, which will tap for 64 mana. Deserted Temple is just in there to untap the Gaia's Cradle. In situations where you don't have Gaia's Cradle, you can untap the Nykthos Shrine to Nyx in those situations. And then Urza's Saga is kind of like this utility land that I have in there that's actually just like a 4th way to get the Cradle in a slower fashion. So Urza's Saga can fetch, the Expedition map, which then you can get Gaia's Cradle, right? If you already have the Expedition map or you already have Gaia's Cradle, then you can just get your Soul Ring, Mana Crypt. You can even just get the Jeweled Lotus if Azusa's died like 2 times and you don't want to pay 7 mana. So you just put that out there, you know, pay 4. Over in the considering section, though, for this deck, we have Hunter's Insight, Sensei's Divining Top, Runic Armasaur, Yasan, Pattern of Rebirth, Survival of the Fittest, Summoner's Pact, Homeward Path, Wasteland, and Reap and Sow. If you guys can think of anything else that you'd want to like put in here or that you would put in here, let me know. I mean, this deck's not going to be the same for 6 months from now probably, because this is going to be an ongoing project along with the other decks that I'm going to try to build that kind of fit this, like, this is a commander that's good, it's viable, but nobody uses it, right? Okay, and then on to the like win cons for this deck. I mean, Avengers Zendikar, Scute Swarm, those are what I call enablers. I mean, they make the Cradle tap for a bunch of mana. And then like Scute Swarm, like I said, you got like 64 of them, and you Concordant Crossroads, or Concordant Crossroads and Craterhoof, right? Finale, Haste Enabler as well, along with fetching Craterhoof. Like just like pretty much at every green plan is, right? Like every green deck wants to Craterhoof. And then cards like Scute Swarm and Avengers Zendikar go really good with the Regal Force or the Shamanic Revelation to draw a bunch of cards. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory way to win with green.
And I'm gonna play a Meat Hook Massacre.
Solid.
Alright,
solid
so
guy.
untap before my draw step, or in response to moving to draw step. I'm gonna cast a Worldly Tutor. I'll put Craterhoof on top. 4 and 5. A Nissa Vital Force. She resolves. I'm gonna neg-3 her to return Scute Swarm back to my hand. I'm gonna cast a Jeweled Lotus.
Nice.
Take 2 from Ancient Tomb, crack this, recast Azusa. Tap 2. I'm gonna cast the Sylvan Scrying. Let's whip out the big boy. 5 green from Nykthos. 3 of it, cast Scute Swarm. I'll go ahead and play that. Cradle. Go ahead and play a forest. That'd be 2 lands. Sadly, this won't move as quick as the other one. Let's see though.
Good. Well, I'm quite happy
We'll
with that.
tap 2 to cast a Kinra's Transformation onto your commander, Johnny.
And what does that do?
Turns you into a 3/3 elk with no abilities.
Okay.
And when it enters the battlefield, I draw a card. Top deck, Verdant Catacombs. Which will give me 8. I'll crack Verdant. Search for a
Oh, everything's got this, doesn't it?
Everything has hasteless.
Yeah.
That'll take me to 16.
This is my 8 life.
A Poison Jew. That's my last land, taking me up to 32 Scoot Swarms. I'll tap this for 34. I'll use one of it, filter it into the Deserted Temple to untap it. I'll use, go down to 26 for Avenger of Zendikar. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 plants. 4 Eldruid and a Llanowar Elves. And then use the rest to cast Grave.
Yeah, I reckon that's that.
So all of my creatures are plus 57 with haste and trample. And a lot of these cards on face value are really hard to see how they interact with each other until you play it. But like when you draw even just 10 cards with the Regal Force, you scroll rack away 7 of them and then shuffle your library to get what you need. I mean, it all works together really well. I would say this deck in a 7 to 8 high power lobby, assuming that 9 and 10 is CDH, this deck probably wins about 30% of the time. Turn 4 to 6 is probably about 50% of those wins. 7 and 8, like 25%, and also 9 plus turns is like 25%. But usually those 9 plus turns are because there's just a lot of board wipes. But if there's no board wipes, somebody else is probably taken off before you are, right? Or somebody's interacted with you a lot. But usually, even in the higher power lobbies, like turns 1 to 3, people are developing their boards, and you are developing them faster. It's usually in this deck. I mean, there's that, like 7 out of 10 times you're taking off faster than everybody else. The rest of the time you're falling behind, you get bad card draw. So, long story short, as it sits currently, Azusa is probably my favorite deck that I own. I mean, she draws cards consistently. She wins fairly consistently. She duds out sometimes, but overall, I'm pretty satisfied with her. I'll continue to update her. So the list, again, I think I've mentioned this earlier, that you're seeing now probably won't be what she is possibly even a week from now. I'm really contemplating that Sensei's Divining Top. But if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate your time. If you want to, again, come hang out with me, talk to me, play some games, maybe on Spell Table. I stream pretty regularly on Twitch. Again, the link will be on the screen. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.